Good, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Um, it's been a minute since I've been live. Uh, you all know if you follow me, you've watched me, you've seen my posts that I have been on quite a journey the past few weeks. Had an opportunity to do a TEDx talk in Asheville, and so coming off of that, it's been a lot of adjustment and a lot of recovery. But I've been excited to kind of get back to doing these live streams because I really do love sharing information. I do love sharing empowerment and giving you tools, bits of tools to be able to take with you in your everyday life. And then, of course, for those who want to work with me, who need a little bit more personalized attention and who want to hear me come in and speak in their organizations, I'm available to do that. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Dr. Maisha. I'm the founder of the Mind ReMapping Academy, and I teach the tools of language and influence, and I teach the tools of personal empowerment. Um, and it's interesting because I talk a lot about belief systems and how we can change our own limiting beliefs, how we can speak to people to be able to reframe and shift belief patterns in others. And I'm very steeped in personal development and personal growth, both for the individual and for people as a whole in organizations. And so, as I thought about what I wanted to talk about, there's always what I plan to talk about, and then what I end up talking about. And I like to keep things relevant and really, and sometimes even personal, to hi, good afternoon, Manny, to be able to share with you the real on the court stuff that that's necessary to be successful and to be effective in communication and in our successes and our journeys. So today, before I do that, I have to acknowledge the last live that I did, I think it was back in mid-February, on LinkedIn platform specifically, was without sound. So I want to acknowledge that. And we were not able to recover the sound to be able to post it directly towards LinkedIn. But if you're with me on Instagram, you were able to see that it was a whole wonderful belief change exercise that I did. So I'm on Instagram. That video is live, and you're able to go back and see that if you are on the platform here on LinkedIn and you notice, and I think even on YouTube, and you notice that there's a video with no sound. We are looking at how we can get that exercise to you all. And if we can't, then I may just need to do an encore. It's all good. So back to the topic at hand. So today we're talking about the fact that in order for us to expand and to grow, we have to be willing to experience some discomfort. And it's interesting because I posted yesterday a photo of myself and my partner Jill Weiner in Conscious Anti-Racism, and we're recording our 2.0 version of our course. And I talk about this concept of growth and discomfort, and I talk about it in the context of levels of learning. So, sometimes it's easier for people to digest things when they can really apply it to something that they can relate to. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the levels of learning and where discomfort exists and why. And when you think about it this way, how it does put it in a different, put discomfort and stepping outside of the comfort zone in a different context. So there are four levels of learning. There's unconscious incompetence. There's the conscious incompetence. There is conscious competence, and then there is unconscious competence. So and I probably have done this before in a live for those of you who follow me, but it always bears repeating because I think that when we talk about the levels of learning and the levels of expansion, and we talk about them in relationship to our growth zones, repetition. The unconscious mind actually needs repetition to develop the learning, and so I think it bears repeating. So unconscious competence is like sleepwalking. You're going along, you don't even really you're not aware that there's a problem. And then something happens. Something happens that makes you aware that there is something to grow, something to expand, some place to to get to outside of the boundaries. And you become conscious that you don't know. And that's conscious incompetence. So when you don't know, it's unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know, right? And then something happens and you sort of wake up to there's a thing that you want to do, there's a skill that you want to have, there is a place that you want to go or a new level that you want to rise to. And you become conscious that you don't know how to do it. And that is conscious incompetence. Now, this is one of the first places where that discomfort happens, especially for people who are highly educated, highly knowledgeable, whether you're educated, system educated, or whether you're street educated, or whether you're everything in between, right? Um, this is where it becomes uncomfortable because if you're used to knowing, and we do like to know, don't we? We love to know. We love to be in that space of knowing. It's very comfortable to know because it makes things predictable, right? Not knowing is unpredictable, and sometimes it can be scary to be in that place of uncertainty, in that place of unpredictability. So we like to know. So when we become aware of there's something that we don't know, it becomes uncomfortable. It brings up stuff. It brings up our internal conversations, our self-doubt, our insecurities. What? Because we're supposed to know. And so this conscious incompetence is the first place where we begin to feel discomfort. But it's also the opportunity, because if we take a step back and we recognize that we're in this space of conscious incompetence, and that's all it is, it doesn't mean anything about who you are as a person. It doesn't mean anything about your prior knowledge. It doesn't mean anything about your character. It's a place that you are in the spectrum of learning. So then what happens is when you look at it from that perspective, it still may be uncomfortable, but you know what to do with it. And when you know what to do with it, you go and you find the tool, the coach, the program, the consultant, the whomever, the whatever you need. You find that thing that will help you to learn, right? To learn. In a minute, I'm going to demonstrate sort of like a metaphor that sort of brings you along. But if you think about, um, you know, the first time that you went from you start maybe I don't know, I don't remember learning how to read. I don't remember back that far. But the first time you were learning to do something, you become aware that you didn't know something. Maybe you wanted to play a sport, and it was the first time, and you were aware that you didn't know how to play that sport, right? That's conscious incompetence, and it can bring up some nervousness. But you go and you get a coach, or you take a program, go to a camp, or whatever they need you to do to acquire that skill. Then you move into the space of conscious competence. Now, what that is that you now have acquired some skill. You kind of know a little bit, but it takes effort to perform the thing, to perform the skill in a way that's workable. Now, I love to use the example of learning a language. So I speak Spanish, and I would consider myself at the level now, used to be more unconscious competence, but now more of a conscious competence. It's an efforting. I have to think in order to formulate the words and the sentences that I want to use. So if you think about if you speak more than one language, if you've ever learned a new language, once you know sort of the grammatical rules and you sort of know quite a bit of a vocabulary, you can put sentences together, you still have to think in order to formulate the communication. And sometimes you mess up. Sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you say things in the language that you think in your language, but you say things how you think in your language, but it doesn't mean the same in another language. Like that happens. And this is the second place where discomfort happens. But why is that? In this particular stage, it happens because we're afraid of messing up. So it's not so much the insecurities and the what does it mean about me and all of it. It's more of the, oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. And boy, I tell you, we have a thing about getting it right, don't we? We have a thing about getting it right. A lot of people have a thing about being perfect, not messing up, making mistakes, failure. What does that all mean? Well, we make it mean something. It doesn't really mean anything because everybody makes mistakes, right? Everybody makes mistakes. Now, in my profession, is as a physician, we were conditioned, and it is true that in a lot of cases, making mistakes can cost someone's life. So then that becomes a context for making mistakes. I imagine in many other professions, making mistakes can cost someone their life or their livelihood. And so we get conditioned that making mistakes is unacceptable. It's bad, it's wrong, it's dangerous. But in the space, in many spaces of learning, that's not actually the case. It's a perception, not a reality. And we particularly teach this in our conscious anti-racism course because one of the things that I see in people who are endeavoring to be allies or partners or accomplices or however whatever the language you want to use is that they don't know what to say or how to say it, and afraid to say the wrong thing, and so they don't do or say anything. And indecision and inaction is just as much of a choice as an action. So what we teach and what I teach my students and what I teach, and I coach, is that you have to be willing to take the action and to practice and mess up in order to move to that level of mastery, to that level of unconscious competence, right? And so, and I see a question here. I'm going to get to that question. That's a great question, right? What if people are thinking, what if people think they are thinking and they are really just feeling? Guess what? That's information, right? So when you're in dialogue, there's an opportunity to mess up and then clean up. The beautiful thing about mistakes is that you can clean them up most times. I mean, there are exceptions, and we're not talking about the fringe, we're talking about the general fabric of it all, right? So most times you can clean them up. And it takes a certain type of listener to be able to identify, and this is part of the stuff that I teach in my NLP trainings, to be able to identify when a person is thinking or feeling and how to interact with that. In fact, um, it's useful to name the thing that's happening, the behavior, rather than label the person, name the behavior. So that's part of the answer to that question. And if we're not willing to make the mistake of actually doing the action, we will never reach that proficiency, that mastery that will take us to the unconscious competence. So let's take an example. This is a common example for anyone who has children. I talk a lot about kids because I got my boy, who's 7. Uh, a toddler. Think about a toddler learning to walk, right? If a toddler doesn't try to walk, well, they'll never learn to walk. If they fall, then they will never get up. But toddlers, they walk, they stumble, they don't do it quickly. They look kind of funny when they're walking, actually quite adorable, but they look a little funny when they first start walking. They fall down, they pull back up, they try again, and before you know it, they build the muscle. They build the muscle memory, and they're able to walk, and then they're able to run, and then they don't have to think about putting one foot in front of the other. For those of you who drive, I know some New Yorkers don't drive. My auntie is a New Yorker that doesn't drive. But for those of you who drive or ride bikes or any type of method of transportation that you operate, the first time you learn to operate a vehicle, when I was 16, when I was 14, I learned how to drive. But when I was 16, I went to go take my driver's test. And I remember you had to do all the things you're supposed to do. You get in the car, you sit in the seat, you adjust the seat, you look at the mirror, you adjust your rear view mirror, you adjust your side view mirror. You put your steering wheel at the place where it's supposed to be. You put your hands into the well, first you turn the key in the ignition. Make sure you have your foot on the brake before you turn the ignition, or the car won't turn on. At least that's how it is now. Then, before you drive, you have to remember to put your hand on the gear and shift, and then put your foot on the gas and then go. There's all these various steps that we would think about when we first learn how to drive. However, when for those of you who drive cars, or the same thing if you learn how to ride a bike, you get on, you sort of put one foot on the pedal, you got to figure out how to push off and try to find that balance, and you're wiggly, and then sometimes you fall off the bike. I mean, I know I fell off the bike a whole bunch of times. We're learning how to ride a bike. And then you hit that balance point. Once you know how to drive a car, for those of you who've been driving for years now, what do? You get in the car and you go through all the steps, but you do it unconsciously and you drive. But first, before you could get there, you had to think about it. You had to practice it. You had to be willing to make mistakes. So, this is a critical thing in our growth and our development, in communication, in interaction with one another. Now, these are some very mechanical examples, but if you think about, if you map this on in your life, whether it be in being in relationships, in and if it's in your work, in communication with your employees or your managers. I had a client today I was speaking with that, I was sharing with her some new ways, to new language and some new ways to interact with a person that she was leading that was a difficult employee, right? Some new ways of naming the behavior, but it was uncomfortable because she had never done it that way before. And so, if you're willing to step through, be in that, exist and accept that conscious incompetence for the moment so that you know where to look to learn the skills that you need to learn. And then if you're willing to be, once you start to learn those skills, if you're willing to be in the discomfort of conscious competence, messing up, falling down, getting back up, falling down, getting back up, then what you'll end up with is the proficiency to be able to move into unconscious competence, which leads to mastery. Now, there's a common pitfall in that space of unconscious competence, is that we get comfortable there. We get comfortable and like we've arrived. But when you reach that level of unconscious competence, it's an opportunity to then look at again where you're consciously incompetent, to further develop yourself, to look to see. And that's not to always go looking where something is wrong. Let's distinguish that. It's not like looking for, well, what's wrong, or what what am I missing, right? We want to take the I out of it. It's like, okay, now that I've developed the unconscious competence to be able to do this skill, let's dig a little deeper and see what's next. And that sort of comes back full circle to something I shared in a post earlier, maybe it was the last week, about having a beginner's mind. Always be willing to go back and evaluate and have a beginner's mind, right? Because when you keep a beginner's mind, no matter how much work you do, no matter how knowledgeable you are, no matter how highly educated you are, no matter how skilled you are, how long you've been doing something, when you are always in the awareness that there's something to learn, then you have the opportunity to expand beyond the boundaries. And that transformation zone, that growth zone, that's beyond the boundaries of our comfort, right? So we have our growth, our comfort zone, then we have our learning zone, then we have sort of this growth zone. And that growth zone is where the mastery happens, but it's not always comfortable. So I invite you this week to look and to see where in your allowing yourself zone. Incompetence. Where are you? Good, we're back here. Where are you allowing yourself to, where are you afraid to be consciously incompetent? What are you making conscious incompetence mean, right? Where are you stuck in the area of becoming consciously competent? What are the places where you're stopped, and what are you making that mean? I think when you begin to examine the conversations that you're having in your head about being in that space of the unknowing or the conscious incompetence, and about what it means to mess up or make mistakes in that realm of conscious competence, when you begin to examine the conversations in your mind, and you'll realize that these are all things that you're most likely either telling yourself or that you've been conditioned by the outside environment, i.e., like corporate medicine is a place where a lot of conditioning happens, society, media, all of these places, social media, all these places are conditioning us to be afraid, to be in inaction, to make the choice of inaction. And we need to begin to examine and re-examine our spaces of our spaces of the spaces of our mind, our spaces of thought, and really dig deeper to look at what are we making up, so that we can expand and we can really go beyond the boundaries of our comfort zone and take our lives to the next level. So that is it. That's what I wanted to say today. Really invite you to take a look at that. If you, of course, feel like that you want to explore this more deeply, I do one-on-one personal transformation work. You're welcome to reach right out to me on whatever platform you're listening on. I know I'm on about 4 platforms right now, live. So, whether it's you message me directly, you can always go to mindremappingacademy.com. I have the link in my profiles, my bio. If you're on Instagram, if you're on LinkedIn, it's in my profile. Like I said, or you can reach directly out to me. And of course, if you think you want to learn more of these tools, you want to learn the tools of mind remapping, of neurolinguistic programming, then you're very welcome. If you want to learn the tools of neurolinguistic programming, and you want to learn how to communicate and listen in a way that allows you to go beyond the boundaries, I do have a trainings upcoming in the spring and the fall, April and September. So you're welcome to reach out to me about that as well. And if you're an organization and you want some executive coaching for yourself or for your staff, your leaders, or some training, reach out to me about that as well. So with that said, you all have a wonderful rest of the day. And I look forward to hearing feedback on how it's going in those zones of unconscious, in those zones of conscious incompetence and conscious competence leading to unconscious competence. Have a blessed day. Namaste.